All right, welcome back, everybody. Again, another World Cup panel here with Minnesota United guests at Brit's Pub, the best place to watch World Cup soccer, as we've seen. Well, not just World Cup soccer, but it's really come to light, at least for me, throughout this fantastic World Cup, that this is the place to be if you want to catch a game. I've got goalkeeping coach JP.
How are you, everybody?
Brent Kallman, superstar, stud defender, Woodbury native.
How we doing?
Everybody. But again, thank you guys for joining us. This is more for kind of our online audience to give you guys a little piece of what we've been doing throughout the World Cup. We have a very busy week as far as Minnesota United is concerned. 3 games in 7 or 8 days, hitting the road tomorrow to head to Houston for a big matchup on the road with the Dynamo. And then, of course, a fantastic win. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention it just last night against the defending 2017 MLS champions in Toronto FC. We won't mention the run of form that they're on right now, but it doesn't matter. You beat the defending champ, you beat the defending champ. And I got to ask you guys, Darwin Quintero's hat trick, maybe the best hat trick you've ever seen in soccer?
I've never seen anything like it. Yeah, for sure.
I mean, unbelievable. The quality of the goals. As a goalkeeping coach, you've seen maybe some balls like that go over your head, over your fingertips, just a sick feeling. And maybe you haven't. Maybe you were just so good that that's never happened to you, but that's got to be pretty unbelievable.
So you've obviously seen my career. You know that I've been chipped a few times like that. The goals, the quality of the goals were unbelievable. Maybe you could fault Clint for one of those, but the quality of the goals were fantastic, and I think everybody who enjoys the game really enjoyed seeing those goals yesterday. Even the one from Giovinco.
Oh,
for
absolutely.
TFC was fantastic.
I think anybody who's a soccer fan, as we talk about the World Cup, and maybe some people who aren't soccer fans but get into it every 4 years because of the World Cup, you watch good soccer, you watch good goals, you watch good saves, good technical ability. It doesn't matter who you're rooting for. If you see that, you're going to cheer for it. So a finish like Giovinco's, can't forget Miguel Ibarra. I mean, that was a fantastic goal as well with the ball over the top by Calvo. And how many good goals have we seen in the World Cup? Very similar.
Yeah, I was cheering for Giovinco's as I watched it go right into the net.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. After the fact, you can respect it. And as long as we come away with a 4-3 win, then you feel okay about celebrating Giovinco's quality.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting to see and how much respect the players have for one another. And I say that because the quality of Giovinco's goal was fantastic. But if you noticed, I think a lot of people did, when we subbed Darwin out of the match, he was actually given an ovation by Giovinco, who appreciated the quality of the goals and the quality of the play. So it's great to see that from him.
It is,
yeah,
and they can
I didn't
respect
catch that.
that.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
They can respect the difficulty of what he accomplished, especially when you're a player at this level and you've been a player for your country or even for the clubs that they've played with in other places. So getting back to kind of the World Cup conversation here, speaking of goals, do you guys have a World Cup memory, a World Cup favorite goal in your lifetime of watching the World Cup before we head into the quarterfinal discussion?
I'll let you go first.
Okay. It was probably what really got me into watching World Cup was in 2002 when the U.S. defeated Portugal. I think I woke up at like 6 a.m., I want to say that game was. And, yeah, that was my fondest memory. It was just an unbelievable win by the U.S. and kind of like really got me watching soccer.
For me, it wasn't so much one goal as it was a game, watching the '82 final when Italy beat West Germany in the final.
Wow.
And
You're
what's
going
funny
way
is
back.
I'm so much older than you that you probably don't even remember.
West Germany.
Right,
I was 2.
You didn't even know that they existed.
That ages me as well. But, yeah, West Germany, not even just Germany anymore. But those are all great memories. And then what about current World Cup? I know we're only getting into the quarterfinals, but this has been an awesome tournament on every level. I don't think there's been a match yet that we've watched going, man, that was a real snoozer. It seems like every single game there's been something exciting to just get behind. Do you have a World Cup memory from the current?
For me, and I like the guy so much as a player simply because I think he's so clutch, the free kick goal by Cristiano Ronaldo against Spain that late in the game in those circumstances, I think was phenomenal.
It when he pulled the shorts up? Was that the one?
He always does.
That was unbelievable. You know what? I was watching that, and he had this little smirk, this little grin after he got fouled, and he was sitting on the ground. He was like, he knew he was going to score.
Like,
He's
I know.
like, you guys messed up. You should not have touched me. I was only going down to ever draw a foul, and I'm going to score this free kick. So, yeah, that was a pretty cool moment for me as well.
Do you have another memory aside from that one?
I'm looking at I'm trying to think right now.
It's hard because there's been so many cool
the Belgium
memories
comeback.
for a reason. Okay.
The Belgium comeback.
Japan.
That was unbelievable. Yeah, what a game that was.
Man, that is, talk about tale of two emotions. I mean, that just the feeling you got. Or how about Denmark, Croatia? Schmeichel, his dad up in the stands.
Yeah.
I mean, arguably, if not the best goalkeeper in the history, maybe one of the best, and seeing his son do what he did in that game?
Would definitely agree. And for a lot of people who are soccer fans, it kind of reminds them of when Peter Schmeichel came on the map for a lot of them when he played in the European Championships. And Denmark wasn't even supposed to make the tournament. They ended up going in place, I think, of Yugoslavia at the time. And then he had an unbelievable tournament. A lot of people hadn't heard of him. He'd just gone to Man United, and then that kind of propelled him in terms of international recognition. So to see his son do that and then watch him kind of taking it all in from the stands and being every bit as excited about it was neat to see.
And knowing he can speak from experience what that pressure is like, because I don't think anybody, if you've never been on that world stage, I saw Jay Feely, who is a kicker in the NFL, he tweeted out the other day, how can someone who's a world-class player miss a penalty? And Kurt Warner, retired Hall of Famer quarterback, said, I used to say the same thing about kickers. So it's funny coming from a field goal kicker, because no one understands the pressure of your country, what that feels like. Maybe you've done it in a big club level game or even at a youth national level, but to be on that stage, and I think he might be referencing Luka Modric when he missed his penalty. I can't remember which one he was referring to, but nonetheless, the point is nobody really understands that pressure unless you've been in that boat. So moving on to the quarterfinals. Any surprises here? Maybe besides Russia, but you can't totally count that as a surprise because they are the host country. You've got an incredible nation behind you. The support, they were the lowest ranked team. It's 70th by the FIFA rankings coming in. But otherwise, Uruguay, France, Brazil, Belgium, Sweden, England, and Russia, Croatia, the matchups. First of all, we're going to be in Houston for Sweden, England. I don't know. It's going to be tough for Adrian and some of the staff, including Callum Williams, to be focusing on our game against Houston that night because that's going to be a pretty big matchup. But who do you have in Uruguay, France, and what do you see from those two teams coming into the quarterfinal?
For me, it's actually a very interesting matchup. They are two very different teams in terms of their styles. And although they both have very good attacking players, Uruguay's style of play is a little bit more defensive. They seem to be a little bit rougher around the edges in terms of all the tactical fouls and the aggression that they use in the match to try to get the upper hand. So France, I think, is a little bit more technical. Uruguay has some good attacking pieces with Suarez and Cavani.
If Cavani's healthy, we'll see.
Healthy.
I heard he was moving around without limping in the 15 minutes of training where reporters could watch him walking around the field, but that is going to be a key piece.
Yeah, 100%. But for me, it always goes back to who's the team that's more solid defensively. And as much as I'd like to say I want to see beautiful attacking football from France win the day, I think Uruguay's going to end up winning the match.
Wow, that's it. I mean, some people have France winning it all, which is no surprise when you look at their roster. But we also know rosters individually don't win games. They got to find a way on the day to get it done. What about you, Brent?
It's funny you said that. I feel like that's been so true about this World Cup. The better team on paper doesn't necessarily win. You see that with a lot of these teams that made it to the quarterfinals. But would you say Uruguay plays anti-football? They're masters of anti-football?
I wouldn't say it's anti-football. I mean, they have enough good attacking pieces going forward. It's just that they're so solid defensively and they play with a low block.
Yeah.
And they've only allowed one goal throughout the tournament so far. I mean, that's if you look at the teams that they've gone against and the attacking pieces that have come at them, aside from a good goalkeeper, the defense.
Godin, Jimenez in the back, and then they're playing against their Atletico Madrid teammate Griezmann, which is kind of an interesting
has huge Uruguayan roots. I mean, his child's godfather plays on the national team for Uruguay, so he's been kind of rooting for them, Griezmann throughout the tournament, and now he's actually playing against him, so that's going to have to stop.
Yeah, I'll still take France.
You're going to take France too?
Yeah, I'll take the quality, but I really appreciate a defensive team, like being a defender, but I'm still going to go with France here.
So moving on to the next matchup, and another just star-studded cast, and we didn't even really mention some of France's name. You mentioned Suarez, and of course Cavani if he's healthy. But now we forgot Pogba, Mbappe. I mean, France is loaded.
Yeah.
So now we move on to Brazil, Belgium, two additional rosters loaded once again. Brazil trying to kind of right the ship, and Belgium just with a stacked and loaded roster, but again have to find a way to put it together with all 11. Brazil coming off a huge 2-0 win against Mexico. That was big time, especially here at Brits. The crowd was going nuts. And I think, was that the game I was here? Yeah, I was here with Bobby Shuttleworth, and Ibsen was here, Maximiano was here, and the crowd was fantastic. And then, of course, we've got Belgium, 3-2 comeback win over Japan. Awesome. So who's riding high coming into this? Is there such a thing as momentum in the World Cup when you have rosters like this?
Go ahead.
I think there is. I think there is momentum for sure. There's probably no game that has more talented players on the pitch, more world-recognized names in one match than this one. Again, for me, everybody talks about Brazil and their attacking flair and their talent. What people overlook is the fact they've only given up 1 goal in the whole tournament.
And they've only scored 7.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's pretty crazy because that is not what you're expecting from a Brazil side, especially with Neymar.
It's not, but they're very balanced. They're very solid. They're good in midfield. They've got good attacking flair. They're experienced defensively. I think Belgium's a good attacking team. I think they've been a little soft defensively. And again, for me, I think it's one that Brazil ends up winning because they've got a good balance. But I think they're the stronger team defensively. In these kind of games, they don't usually end up being 4-3 games.
No, they don't, but it would be fun if it was.
Yes, it would be.
I think we'd all appreciate that. You, Brent?
I got to go with Brazil here. Like you said, you go through the starting lineups of these teams, and it's just unbelievable, especially Belgium. This Belgium team, the last World Cup, was considered a dark horse. And now you look at this team, you go through their starting lineup, and it's just of who's who of guys that play at the top level in Europe. And but the same thing, I got to go with Brazil. I think they can grind you out a little bit. They're not going to keep the ball all the time. But when they get guys in space, they get guys like Neymar in space running at you. He can be 1-on-2, and he can create a dangerous goal-scoring opportunity. So I just think they have a little too much firepower. Then you bring on a guy like Firmino to finish out the last 20 minutes of the game. I just think they have a little bit too much.
Not a bad option.
No.
What's amazing is you think about a team like that, and if I remember right, Casemiro's out of the game.
Yep.
I think he can't play, but you just put in a guy like Fernandinho.
Yeah, or early in the tournament. Who was it? The left back. Marcelo walks off with injury. Oh, Felipe Luis comes on in the game,
Yeah, the depth is insane.
Incredible.
It's ridiculous for some of these countries, and I think that's what's been another fun thing. And some surprises, like you said, normally Brazil is a high-scoring team, maybe struggling defensively. They've gone 310 minutes without allowing a goal, only have 7 goals for, and they've made it through. And now maybe they're going to get on the front foot attacking-wise. Belgium is the leading scorer in the tournament with 12 goals, I believe. So you just never know who's going to win that battle. And again, goalkeeping comes up huge. These are the times where if a goalkeeper stands on their head, regardless of who you're facing, can absolutely save you. We saw Luis Robles going back to MLS the other day do that against Toronto FC in the second half for the Red Bulls. So if you have a good goalkeeper that's on, can get you through.
100%. He's definitely one of the better ones in the world.
Yeah, well, and his consecutive streak was ridiculous as well. So moving on to the next match, Sweden-England. And if you guys don't pick England, we won't take it back. We won't take it back to training tomorrow. We won't let Adrian know. We don't want get anybody in trouble here. But Sweden with a 1-0 win over Jerry's Jerome Thiesson, Switzerland. I loved the tweets between him and John Olboge, former goalkeeper for Minnesota United. That was pretty funny. They had a nice little thing going back and forth there. And then England, of course, 4-3 in penalties. Feels like it hasn't happened in an eternity that they've won on penalties. Another tough matchup, star-studded. Who do you got?
I'll take this one on first because it's hard to bet against England right now, especially the fact that they almost seem, although the soccer hasn't been fantastic, they almost seem a little bit immune to the pressure, which isn't what you're used to seeing.
A lot of people have talked about that, just the demeanor of the England side. They just seem more relaxed.
Yeah, and it comes from, I think it stems from their management team. You see Gareth Southgate on the sideline, just relaxed and not losing his mind.
Can you be relaxed in a 3-piece suit with a vest and a tie?
I mean, maybe you don't look good in it, but he seems to be quite relaxed and comfortable. But he has them playing in a way where, and you got to remember the age of these kids. I'm not sure a lot of them remember England losing on penalties.
Yeah. I mean, everyone else is talking about it, but it's not in their mind. They've only been told the stories of it.
Correct.
It's funny you mentioned that. Heading into that shootout the other day, they were talking about all the different mental stuff and the preparation that they were getting these guys ready for the last few months, just in case they would get to a shootout.
Telling the goalkeeper where they were going and then still having to shoot it there, different things like that.
Yeah, and practicing the walk-up and all this stuff. I think they've been doing all these like little mental things that they really add up. And if they're doing that for a shootout, I'm sure that's not only for the penalty shootout. That's for their approach to the game and how they're handling the pressure and all that stuff. And I think those little mental edges are actually really huge, and I really like that. So I got to pick England in this game, even though I absolutely love this Sweden team.
Well, they've been
old school, 4-4-2, low block. They grind it out. They're not.
People
pretty
are
to
like,
watch.
"What's a 4-4-2?" Anybody who's like 25 and under, like, what is that? And Gustav Svensson, got the start the last game, Seattle Sounders,
Yeah.
hadn't played a minute in the World Cup. Injury, steps right in, does a great job. So I think it was really cool, too, as the World Cup has gone on, when you see these names and the announcers, the commentators saying, he plays for so-and-so in MLS, he plays for LAFC. If you're talking about Carlos Vela from Mexico, you talk about, of course, our very own captain Francisco Calvo for Costa Rica. That was really cool. So Gustav Svensson, another one who got some minutes for Sweden. But I can't really pick against England either. I think it's a different era. It was really cool to see that Wall Street Journal article that was written where our very own Chris Wright, the CEO of Minnesota United, was interviewed. Gareth Southgate and his entourage came over, sat courtside for a Timberwolves Pelicans game, and he wanted to kind of learn about the other sports in the United States, not just from like a fan base, but of course what they even do physically. It was cool to see that. And now Chris said he's been called up by the BBC, he's like doing all these interviews because everybody's trying to figure out what is going on with Gareth Southgate and how does he have this turned around in the right direction.
Well, you're starting to see more of that in sports. There's more cross-pollination. There's coaches talking to one another, rugby coaches talking to soccer coaches talking to basketball coaches about different ideas in terms of periodization, whether it's tactical stuff, whether it's mental skills, all those things. So there's a lot of ideas that are out there that, you can pick other people's brains. No one coach has all the answers, and the fact that he's open to that and to speak to other people and to continue learning, and you can see what it's done for his team and for his country.
It's amazing when you kind of open your mind and are open to learning from others rather than thinking you have the best way or surrounding yourself with people that are really good in a certain area and supporting you in that way. And I think we're seeing that across the board in sports. But you talk about the mental edge, Brent. Who had a sports psychologist growing up, like when I played club? And now every college has it, every pro has it, and I think it's a very important piece that people maybe underestimate in the pressures, and especially at this level. But it kind of goes back to that mental edge where you're not going and laying on a couch for hours on end, but just the little intricacies of the game, and that can separate you from the average or the goods to the greats can make a big difference.
Yeah.
Moving on, Russia, Croatia. Is this a crapshoot because Russia's on this tear and they're the host country, or is this Croatia hands down? We got Russia who, 1-1 versus Spain, won in penalties, 4-3, and then Croatia 3-2 on penalties over Denmark, as we were just talking about with the goalkeeping performance of Schmeichel. Who do you got in this one?
This is a tough one because it's difficult to beat a home team.
Yep.
And although you want to say there's some pressure on Russia, I think they'd prefer to be playing at home than they would be to be playing anywhere else.
If they were anywhere else, I don't think they would be in this position.
No, so
right?
I think they're riding the wave. They have the country behind them, which is obvious. But Croatia has a lot of good pieces.
Yep.
It's a good, experienced team. When you talk about Modric in midfield, when you've got Rakitic in midfield, when you've got Mandzukic playing up top, you've got guys that have won Champions League. They've played for their national team. It's hard to bet against Croatia in this one. The one thing I think is interesting about this game is it could be one of those midfield tactical battles because when you look statistically at the game, they're the teams that have created the fewest chances and shots on goal, both of them, and they're the ones that have conceded the fewest shots. It could be one of those games that you kind of see in the midfield third. And some people call that boring, other people just call it tactical and fun to watch. So it'll be an interesting one to see, but I think Croatia's got a little bit too much for Russia in this.
I have to agree. I mean, this Croatian midfield's unbelievable. You got Kovacic on the bench that can't even start. Real Madrid player can't even start in that midfield for them. Yeah, I think they just have a little bit too much. But this Russia team, another team that will just grind it out, and apparently their numbers have been off the charts. The amount of ground these guys are covering. Some people say, no, we got to test these guys. But I really do think it's that home advantage. They have that little extra push, that extra gas in the tank. And they're going to make it interesting for sure. They're not going to go out easy, but I think at the end, Croatia has a little bit too much quality.
Well, I think the first game of the World Cup, when it was Russia, Saudi Arabia, and it was that absolute beatdown, people were just thinking this was a fluke. It's the first game. Saudi Arabia is not a tough opponent. They've got the home country behind them, all the build-up, the pressure on those guys. That's the other thing, too. The pressure being the home country, it can go the other way, and especially the pressure of Russia can go the other way. But instead, they've thrived on it, and their fan base and the people in Russia have really gotten behind him, and that the Uncle Mo can definitely have an effect.
Yeah, I think it goes back to what we said earlier. It's those psychological aspects. It's the mental edge, and so many of the athletes are equals, physically, technically, tactically. But that mental piece, and like you said, the momentum is a part of that. Playing in their home country, knowing that they've got everybody behind them is I think a fantastic feeling for them. So should be an interesting game for sure.
Well, and I think, raise your hand if you thought at this point Argentina, Portugal, Spain, all these teams would be out of it. You know, I mean, I think everyone's kind of thinking.
Yeah, I definitely thought they were going to be out.
Oh yeah, you did. That was your bracket. I'm gonna go check it out and see it hanging up on the wall.
My bracket doesn't
Who
even
is
exist.
winning the bracket pool? Do you guys have one on the team? I mean,
we didn't make one.
You didn't make one. Wow.
No, which is a joke, right?
That is really terrible.
That's not good
That's
enough.
pretty,
really
especially when you've got players from, 3 or 4 of the countries participating in this World Cup.
Yeah.
It seems like now, us U.S. people, we'll have to wait until at least 2026 when we're guaranteed to get in. I think if we get an automatic bid, we'll see about 2022. But yeah, you would think with Darwin and Christian, Miguel, you've got Alexi, you've got Ibsen, you've got Maxi, all these players, Francisco. But yeah, interesting that you guys didn't have your own bracket. Who you guys have winning it all? I mean, now that we've whittled it down to this, hopefully you didn't pick somebody that's already out. I picked Germany, so I'm really toast. But who do you guys have winning it all if you look at the ones you just picked at least to win the next game in advance?
For me, it's hard to get bet against Brazil. They've got
five-time champion. This is their time.
Great balance in their team.
Mm-hmm.
They're good defensively. They've got enough offensively. Although the diving of Neymar drives me crazy sometimes.
The gifts were hilarious, though. Were they?
Yes,
Did you see them?
Yes. But it's in that piece of it. I mean, it's always existed in soccer a little bit, and I think sometimes it's a little out of hand. But I think that team in general just has a little bit too much for everybody else left in the tournament.
Yep, that's who I picked. I'm going to stick with them. It's Brazil, even though they have a tough road. They got to get through a really tough Belgium team. I think they got too much. They're so deep. They're so dangerous. Neymar, he can roll around the floor all he wants. He's going to draw yellow cards. He's going to, play the ref. But
hopefully he'll get a few yellows for diving. That was a thing for a while. Do you remember that? Which World Cup was that? Was that just 2014 when they started really, or was it 2010 when they really started handing out yellows for diving because it got so absurd?
They might want to think about starting that.
Yeah, they might want to start that up again because plus it's the delay of game. It's unfortunately it gives soccer a bad name. I mean, there's a time and a place to take it and to do it and get the call, but the rolling 7 times across the field all the way to the other sideline, that gets to be a bit much. And then anyone who's not a soccer fan and has already been ripping on the sport for some reason, then they just throw that out there. Oh, these guys roll around,
Those guys can keep baseball. I don't care about those guys. I'm going to be honest with you. Those guys can keep baseball. I love it. I love it. Even though I'm a defender and I hate when a guy dives against me, I want my guys trying to manipulate the ref. We should be working on the refs all the time. Not embellishing and doing all the rolling around and stuff, but it's just being intelligent. If you take a bad touch and you're not going to get to the ball, you go down. Yeah. I mean, people, I know, especially Minnesotans, guys that people that like hockey, they hate this kind of stuff. Yeah. They hate it. Okay? Yep. I really respect it.
I love to hear a red, white, and blue All-American kid say that, to be honest with you, because it's one thing that I think we lack a little bit of in this country.
100%.
To go and overdo it and have that be the centerpiece of the game drives me nuts as well. But there's this thing, this mentality that Americans have. When they get fouled, they want to fight through everything. They get bumped, and instead of going down, they want to fight through it. They want to fight through it. When sometimes, just tactically, it makes more sense. Psychologically, it makes more sense. In terms of momentum in the game, it makes more sense just to go down, take the foul, and then move on from there. So it's interesting to hear you say that, and it's actually great to see that the country is becoming a little more cultured that way in terms of its understanding of the game.
Well, and I think it's much more situational. I don't think it's just every time one way, like Neymar goes down no matter what. I give credit for players, even like a Giovinco, who stays on his feet. He's 5'4". If he thinks he can keep the ball and continue, and then if you can't keep the ball, it frustrates me when someone probably could have kept the ball and had a good chance on goal, and they go down right away. Right. Like, that drives me nuts. It's like, if you try to stay on your feet a little bit, you might have had a chance in. You might have been in. So I think it's situational. I know it's tough for a player in the moment to try to figure that out and pick those moments. But there was a couple times last night where, Giovinco felt like in the box he could keep his feet and get in. And
he'll go down a little soft.
Absolutely.
25 yards in. He's waiting for you to make the mistake because he's going to punish you.
He senses you coming from behind. Yep. He knows if you're coming from behind to clip his heels or whatever. And there's players, so they do it in smart situations, but it drives me nuts when they just go down regardless of the situation. Last but not least, now that we know these players that are in there, at least in this quarterfinal, do you have a golden boot? Do you have a, who's your player of choice for a golden boot? I don't even know who's leading in all the goals. I mean, Lukaku, he's got to be up there. He's got, 6?
I don't even know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not even sure who's leading that.
Yeah.
But all he needs
How about an MVP of the tournament?
That's a great one.
You know,
Love to see it be a goalkeeper.
Yeah. Well, hey, very well could be with the amount of penalties that have occurred
Yeah.
in the run of play and in these shootouts. So I think that's the fun of it. This tournament's not lacking stars.
No.
And maybe something that you didn't know. You know, I mean, James Rodriguez was basically made in the 2014 World Cup. And, of course, he went out injured and didn't play in the last match. But that's been kind of cool, too, because it's a time to shine for some players that you maybe didn't expect.
Yeah.
So.
And I know I was joking about, or was trying to make a joke about the goalkeeping, but hopefully it'll be some great attacking play that we see over these next few games. That's what I think we all really want to see.
And we hope it continues Saturday in Houston for Minnesota United, right?
That's right.
I feel like there's been a resurgence across MLS, even a couple of the goals last night in the later game in LA Galaxy, and now I'm spacing on who they just played. LA Galaxy and
DC.
DC. Yeah, but some great goals in that game, some stoppage time goals, which we've seen plenty of in this World Cup. So it's been highly entertaining, and of course, this is the place to watch it. This place was going nuts. England, Colombia. I saw so many videos, cell phone videos, including our very own Jamie Watson and Callum Williams, and the owners here of Brits as well. So thank you guys for joining us once again for the World Cup panel. We'll have another one of these, I believe, before the semifinal, and for sure before the final. I would assume the next step down the road. But tune in, of course, to our broadcast as well. We take on the Houston Dynamo Saturday night and on the road, so hopefully capitalize on some momentum from a huge win against Toronto FC, and then on the road to Houston Dynamo. So thank you guys for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks so much.